The next error. Change main, the name of the method, to man. So I'm going to take out the I. Alright, so what's wrong with that? Well, there's nothing wrong with the name man. It's a perfectly fine name to give a method. So syntactically, that's a perfectly valid method to define. So how is this going to play out in terms of errors? Let's save it, compile it. This time it should compile correctly. But what's going to happen when we submit this to the compiler? To the interpreter. When the interpreter attempted to run the program, here's the error it gave us. It essentially blew up saying, exception in the thread main, no such method error, and it indicates that the method it could not find is main. That's because the main method is special in the sense that that's where a Java program begins. When you submit a class to an interpreter, it looks for the main method with exactly this signature, and that's where it begins execution. This time we submitted a class to the interpreter that had no main method. It has a man method, but it has no main method. And so it didn't know where to begin, it had no main method to execute, and so produces that error and terminates the program. Okay? So we can put the I back in main. I'm going to, once again, delete the class file before we move on to the next error. This time we're to change the call to print line to bogus. Change the word print line to bogus. Let's call the bogus method. Well, we know there is no bogus method in the system.out object, so it should give us some kind of compile time error that indicates that it doesn't know what bogus is in this context and therefore can't figure out what you're trying to call. Save it, compile, produces one error. Let's read it carefully. In test.java on line 6, it cannot find a symbol, and the symbol it can't find is a method called bogus that takes a string as a parameter. Shows you what class we're talking about. There's the line that it can't resolve, and that's its way of saying, I don't know what it is you're trying to do here. I can't find this method that you seem to want to call. And that's because there is no such method. So we'll change it back to our print line. The next error is to remove the semicolon at the end of the print line statement. So syntactically a problem. The compiler should catch this. And in this case, produces the one error, and that's a fairly explicit and fairly dead-on error message. It expected a semicolon and didn't find one here at the end of the print line method. So if only all of them were as explicit and accurate as that one. The last error we are to introduce is to remove this last brace, this last curly brace that terminates the definition of the class. Main method has curly braces defining what's in the main method. The entire main method is inside the definition for the class test. So by removing this last brace, these don't match up anymore. There is no match to this opening curly brace, and should therefore be a syntactic error. The question is, what is it going to indicate? Try to compile it. One error. and basically in this case reached the end of the file while it was parsing. It still had business to do, certainly a brace to match up with, and it hit the end of the file before it could finish its parsing, and therefore that's an error. So we go back in, put the curly brace in, and we're back to a program that compiles and runs. Alright, so that's just a series of different kinds of errors. Some of them caught at compile time, some of them causing runtime errors, some of them executing all the way through without a problem, but you could call them logical errors. Alright? See you next time.